I never thought my life would come to this, standing in a courtroom, fighting not for money, not for property, but for the right to keep my own children. My name is Poppy Hartwell. I'm 34 years old, and 6 months ago, I was forced into the most brutal battle I've ever known. Not in a hospital ward where I worked long shifts as a pediatric nurse, not in the quiet wars of marriage, but in a family court, where every word, every accusation, and every silence seemed designed to break me down. I always imagined my children Jasper and Imogen would grow up in a home filled with stability and love. Jasper, now 8, has always been my thoughtful, watchful boy. Too serious for his age, but with eyes that see more than he lets on. Imogen, only 5, still clings to innocence, still believes the world is good even when the people she loves prove otherwise. They are my heart, my purpose, and the reason I kept fighting when everyone told me it was hopeless. The truth is, when you're a single mother going up against a wealthy, well-connected family, the scales of justice tilt cruelly. Sebastian, my ex-husband, came into court with polished barristers, a family wealthy enough to make truth sound like fiction, and a carefully crafted story that painted me as unfit, unstable, and undeserving. And yet in the darkest moment when my voice felt too small to matter, it wasn't me who saved us. It was Jasper. My 8-year-old son, who walked up to the witness stand, looked his father straight in the eye and revealed a truth so raw it made even the judge's eyes fill with tears. But before I tell you what Jasper said, I need to take you back to where it all began. Because stories like this don't explode in one dramatic moment, they build slowly like cracks forming in a wall until one day it all collapses. 2 years earlier, I thought I was living the dream. I had been married to Sebastian for 8 years. He was charming, ambitious, and when we met, I thought he was the love of my life. Together we built a home in Surrey, a beautiful house with a garden where the children played, where I imagined we would grow old. I worked as a pediatric nurse, a job that drained me, but also gave my life meaning. I came home every day exhausted, but with a quiet sense of purpose, knowing I had been there for children fighting for their lives. Sebastian never quite respected that. To him, my work was playing with children. He used to laugh when I came home with aching feet and said, "At least you're not under the real pressure of building businesses." At first, I brushed it off. But when his property development firm exploded with success, when the money started pouring in, when investors and clients began to treat him like a king, something in him changed. He started coming home late, taking business trips that stretched over weekends, and when he was home, he was absent, his eyes glued to his phone or his laptop, his words clipped and dismissive. I tried to reach him. I suggested counseling, family holidays, anything to remind us who we were before the money. He brushed me aside. "You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under," he'd say. "You get to play nurse while I'm out there building our future." His words sliced at me, turning my pride in my work into shame, and slowly I started believing him. The children noticed before I admitted it to myself. Jasper asked why Daddy was angry all the time. Imogen clung to me at night, her small arms wrapped tightly around my waist, as though she could feel the ground shifting beneath our family. I tried to shield them, maintaining bedtime routines, weekend outings, pretending everything was fine. But children are more perceptive than we think. They see the shadows we hide. The end came one Tuesday morning in March. I was still in my nursing scrubs, tying my hair back before a long shift, when Sebastian walked into our bedroom. His face was cold, his eyes distant. "I can't do this anymore, Poppy," he said flatly. "I haven't been happy for a long time." At first I thought he meant stress, maybe depression. I suggested a vacation, counseling time away. He cut me off. Then he said her name, Charlotte, his 26-year-old personal assistant. They'd been having an affair for 8 months. 8 months of lying to my face, kissing me goodnight, tucking in our children, pretending we were a family. "I'm moving out this weekend," he said, as casually as if he were announcing the weather. "Charlotte and I have a flat in London. We'll figure out custody later." Custody. He spoke the word like our children were furniture, like they could be divided by schedule. I remember standing there numb, trying to process that my marriage was over, that my children's lives had been ripped apart without warning. That evening, I sat Jasper and Imogen down and told them Daddy was going to live somewhere else. Jasper asked, "Did we do something wrong, Mom?" My heart broke into 1,000 shards. Imogen simply said, "Okay, Mommy," and went back to coloring. But that night, I found her crying in bed, clutching the teddy bear her father had given her. I should have known then that this was just the beginning. That the betrayal wasn't only in Sebastian's affair, but in what his family would do to try and erase me from my own children's lives. The months after Sebastian left felt like living in a blur of exhaustion and heartbreak. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital, desperate to cover legal fees while keeping food on the table. But that meant less time with the children at the very moment they needed me most. I would kiss them goodbye in the morning, work a 12-hour shift, and sometimes come home after they were already asleep. On those nights, guilt pressed so heavy on my chest that I could barely breathe. Meanwhile, Sebastian's new life looked like something out of a glossy magazine. He and Charlotte moved into a massive house in Chelsea, a house with a garden bigger than our entire property, a swimming pool, and rooms filled with things my children couldn't stop talking about. Every other weekend, he picked them up and returned them with stories about expensive restaurants and trips to toy shops. Jasper told me about the pool, the shiny bikes, the endless treats. Imogen gushed about how Charlotte bought her dolls. I smiled through it, telling them I was glad they had fun, but inside it gutted me. I felt like the dull, tired parent, while Sebastian got to be the fun one, the one who dazzled them with luxury. But what I didn't realize at first was that this wasn't just about Sebastian. His family had already chosen their side, and it wasn't mine. From the very beginning of our marriage, his sister Cordelia had despised me. She saw me as beneath them, a nurse from a modest background, not polished enough for her golden brother. And his mother, Beatrice, had never hidden her disdain. She always found subtle ways to remind me that I wasn't one of them, that I didn't belong in their world. After the separation, they didn't just take Sebastian's side, they declared war. They began whispering poison into the children's ears. Small things at first. "Mommy works too much, doesn't she?" Or, "Wouldn't it be nicer if you had more time with Daddy?" They planted seeds hoping to paint me as the cold, distant mother, while presenting Sebastian as the devoted parent. Soon those whispers turned into accusations, written down, formalized, brought into court as evidence against me. When the custody hearing finally arrived, it was on a rainy Thursday morning in October. I barely slept the night before. My solicitor, Mr. Davies, had prepared me for weeks, but nothing could have braced me for what Sebastian's family had orchestrated. The courtroom felt like an execution chamber the moment I stepped in. Sebastian sat at his table with his high-priced barrister, Mr. Thornfield, a man with a voice like polished steel and the kind of presence that could intimidate anyone. Behind them sat the three women who had judged me since the first day: Cordelia, pristine, in a suit that likely cost more than my rent; Beatrice, with her silver hair perfectly styled, her cold gaze burning into me; and Charlotte, who had the audacity to sit there as though she had a rightful place in this battle for children who weren't hers. Mr. Davies presented my case first. He spoke calmly of my stable employment, my clean record, my role as the children's primary caregiver. He showed evidence of my income, my home environment, the love and attachment Jasper and Imogen had for me. For a moment, I almost believed we had a chance. Then Thornfield rose. His voice dripped with superiority. "Your Honor," he said, "we will demonstrate that Mrs. Hartwell's motivation in this custody battle is not the welfare of her children, but financial gain. We will present testimony from family members who have witnessed her manipulative behavior firsthand." My stomach twisted. I had expected lies, but hearing them laid out so formally, so convincingly, rattled me. Cordelia was the first to testify. With a feigned look of concern, she told the court I had always been more interested in Sebastian's wealth than in him, that I pushed him into bigger projects for the sake of lifestyle. Lies, every word. She described me as neglectful, as a mother who cried in front of her children and made them feel guilty for loving their father. Jasper's name was dragged into her testimony. She claimed he had confided in her, that I guilted him. I wanted to scream. Then Beatrice took the stand, and her words were worse. "The children arrive at our home hungry," she said, voice trembling theatrically. "Their clothes are too small. They are anxious, frightened. Little Jasper told me that he has to make dinner for himself and his sister because his mother works so much. I nearly collapsed from the weight of it. Yes, there had been nights when I came home late and they ate cereal for dinner, but 3 times in 6 months hardly made me unfit. Their uniforms were new that very term, and never, not once, did I ever make my children feel abandoned. But Beatrice wasn't finished. She accused me of poisoning the children against Sebastian, of telling them he didn't love them, that he chose Charlotte over them. Each word was another dagger, and Sebastian sat there nodding as if it were all true. The final blow came when Thornfield presented evidence photos of the children eating cereal, screenshots of Jasper's slightly slipping grades, a teacher's letter about Imogen's behavioral changes. Each fragment of truth twisted, distorted into something damning. I looked at the judge and felt my world collapsing. They weren't just attacking me, they were preparing to take my children away from me, and for the first time in my life I felt powerless. Then I noticed Jasper, sitting at the back with my mother, his little hands clenched tight in his lap, eyes locked on his father with a mixture of hurt and determination. When recess came, I went to him trying to smile. "How are you, sweetheart?" His voice was steady but fierce. "Mom, they're lying. Aunt Cordelia, Grandma, they're saying things that aren't true. You always tell me it's okay to love Daddy. You always make us dinner. They don't know." I felt tears sting my eyes. He looked at me, his small face serious. "Mom, I need to tell them. I need to tell the judge the truth." I froze. My instinct was to protect him, to shield him from this ugliness. "No, darling, you don't have to. This is grown-up stuff." But he shook his head. "If I don't tell the truth, they might take me and Imogen away from you. I can't let that happen." And in that moment, I realized something. Sometimes the people we fight hardest to protect are the very ones who end up protecting us. When court reconvened, Mr. Davies was preparing to call my supervisor from the hospital as a character witness. I tugged on his sleeve, my voice low and trembling. "I want to put Jasper on the stand." He turned to me in shock. "Poppy, he's 8 years old. This could traumatize him. The court doesn't usually let children his age testify." But I shook my head. "He's already in the middle of it. He understands everything and he wants to speak. He's the only one who can cut through their lies." Mr. Davies hesitated, glancing toward my son, who sat ramrod straight, his eyes locked on us. Jasper looked far too old in that moment, as though the weight of everything had aged him years beyond his age. My heart clenched, but I knew. He was ready. When the judge allowed it, the courtroom fell into a silence so thick I could hear the rain outside hitting the windows. Jasper smoothed down his school uniform and walked to the witness stand with more composure than most grown men. The barrister for Sebastian objected, but the judge silenced him. And then Jasper sat, small legs dangling above the floor, folding his hands neatly, his little chin raised with courage. The judge's voice softened. "Hello, Jasper. My name is Judge Peaton. Don't be nervous. I just want to ask you a few questions about your mommy and daddy. Is that okay?" "Yes, sir," Jasper replied. His voice was clear, steady. "Can you tell me what it's like living with your mommy?" Jasper paused, gathering his thoughts like he always did when solving math problems. "Living with mommy is good. She works really hard at the hospital helping sick kids. Sometimes she comes home tired, but she always asks about my day and helps me with homework. When Imogen has bad dreams, mommy stays with her until she falls asleep, even if it's late. And when I'm worried, she explains things so I understand." Tears burned my eyes, but I forced myself to stay silent. This was his moment. "And what about living with your daddy?" the judge asked gently. Jasper's expression changed. "I love Daddy, but things are different at his house. Charlotte makes most of the rules. She says I have to call her Auntie Charlotte, and I'm not allowed to talk about Mommy there because it makes Daddy sad." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Sebastian shifted in his seat, pale. The barrister scribbled furiously. "You can't talk about your mommy when you're with your daddy?" the judge asked carefully. "No, sir," Jasper said firmly. "Charlotte says Daddy is moving on with his life. But sometimes at night, Imogen cries for mommy and we're told to be quiet about it." I wanted to crumble, but Jasper wasn't finished. The judge leaned forward again. "Some people have said your mommy doesn't take good care of you and your sister. What do you think about that?" Jasper sat straighter, and for the first time his voice carried a flicker of indignation. "That's not true. Mommy takes really good care of us. She makes us breakfast every morning and puts little notes in our lunch boxes. When we're sick, she stays home from work even though I know she worries about the kids at the hospital. She taught me how to tie my shoes and how to be kind to people. The people who said those things don't know what our life is really like. I watched as the judge nodded, but Jasper wasn't done. His voice grew quieter, more fragile. Sir, there's something else. Something I promised I wouldn't tell. But Mommy always says telling the truth is more important than keeping promises that hurt people. The courtroom froze. Even Cordelia and Beatrice stopped whispering. Go on, Jasper, the judge said softly. Jasper swallowed hard. Daddy told me that if I said Mommy was mean to me, I could live in his big house with the pool all the time. He said Mommy just wanted his money and didn't love us like he did. But that's not true. I told Daddy it wasn't true. Gasps filled the room. Sebastian's barrister half rose, but the judge held up a hand for silence. And Charlotte told me that when I turn 18, I could choose never to see Mommy again. She said Daddy would buy me a car if I told you I wanted to live with them forever. The sound that swept through the courtroom was audible shock. Beatrice covered her mouth. Cordelia stared at her lap. Sebastian's face went from pale to ashen, his eyes darting nervously toward the judge. But I don't want a car or a pool if it means lying about my mommy. Jasper finished, his voice breaking slightly. My mommy taught me that love isn't about buying things. It's about being there when someone needs you. And Mommy is always there for us. I love my daddy, but I won't lie about my mom. She's the best mom in the world, and everyone should know the truth. Silence. The kind of silence that weighs heavy, that makes the air feel sacred. The judge's eyes shone with tears as he nodded slowly. My little boy, my brave Jasper, had just shattered the fortress of lies built against us. In that moment, I realized the truth I had tried so hard to shield him from had already shaped him. And instead of breaking him, it had forged him into something stronger. The silence after Jasper's testimony felt like a living thing. The barrister shuffled papers, as if rearranging words could erase what had just been spoken, but nothing could undo the impact of my son's voice. Judge Peaton dabbed his eyes with a handkerchief and called for a short recess. His face unreadable, but his hands trembling slightly. As the courtroom emptied, I rushed to Jasper. He stood frozen, as if unsure whether he had done the right thing. I dropped to my knees and pulled him into the fiercest hug of my life. He buried his face in my shoulder and whispered, "Did I do okay, Mom?" I held him tighter. "You did more than okay, sweetheart. You were brave, braver than I've ever been." My tears soaked into his hair, but they weren't tears of despair this time, they were tears of awe. My little boy had stood against an army of adults and chosen truth. When the court resumed, Thornfield tried to regain control. His arguments came rapid fire, painting Jasper as coached, insisting that an 8-year-old couldn't comprehend the complexities of custody. This is a child repeating what his mother has fed him, he argued. But his words fell hollow, brittle, unable to stand against the sincerity Jasper had laid bare. The judge's gaze, sharp and unyielding, now cut Thornfield off mid-sentence. I heard the boy myself. He spoke with clarity, with detail, with a conviction impossible to manufacture. You may wish to dismiss him as a child, Mr. Thornfield, but in this courtroom today, he spoke more truth than any adult thus far. I caught my breath. It was as if the entire foundation of Sebastian's case had crumbled in one moment. Beatrice shifted uncomfortably. Cordelia kept her eyes down, and even Charlotte's face had drained of color. Sebastian himself sat stiff and pale, his jaw locked but his hands twitching on the table. When Judge Peaton delivered his ruling, it came like thunder. The court finds in favor of Mrs. Hartwell. Primary custody of the children will remain with their mother. Mr. Hartwell will have supervised visitation every other weekend until he has completed a co-parenting program and demonstrated he is capable of supporting, not manipulating, his children. Any further attempts to coerce or bribe the children into falsehoods will result in severe restrictions on access. The words hit me with such force that I nearly collapsed with relief. For months I had lived with the terror of losing them, with the nightmare of waking up to an empty house. But in that moment the scales tipped back toward justice, all because my son had dared to speak when I couldn't. I glanced toward Sebastian. For the first time in years I saw something break in his mask. His eyes darted away from mine, and for once he had no smug words, no sharp retorts. His family sat in stunned silence, their carefully constructed narrative shattered. And Charlotte, well, she simply gathered her bag and slipped out quietly, as though she knew her role in this farce was finished. The days that followed were a strange mixture of exhaustion and healing. I watched Jasper walk taller as if unburdened now that he had spoken the truth. His grades improved, his laughter returned, and he even joined the debate team at school. I like speaking up for what's right, he told me one evening, his eyes shining with quiet pride. Imogen, too, blossomed. Her nightmares faded, her anxious clinging eased, and she became her bubbly, fearless little self again. Sebastian, for his part, had no choice but to comply with the court's orders. At first, his visits were stiff, supervised affairs, stripped of the manipulation and bribes that once poisoned them. Over time, something shifted. Perhaps it was shame. Perhaps it was Jasper's courage echoing back at him. But slowly he began to act like a father again, instead of a man fighting for control. The bribes stopped. The bitterness dulled. For the first time since our separation, he sat with the children and listened. Charlotte disappeared within 3 months. The glamorous fantasy of being stepmother to children she couldn't buy proved too heavy a burden. I never saw her again, and Sebastian never mentioned her. His family, too, fell silent. Cordelia and Beatrice still held me at arm's length, their pride refusing apology, but they stopped their campaign of sabotage. It was progress, however small. But the real victory was not mine. It was Jasper's. He had carried a weight no child should ever bear, listening to whispers, lies, and threats, and he had chosen truth. And in doing so, he had not only saved me, he had saved himself, his sister, and perhaps even his father. That night after the ruling, when the house was quiet and the children asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence as I let myself finally breathe. I thought about the months of fear, the endless accusations, the feeling of being hunted by people determined to erase me. And then I thought about Jasper standing on that witness stand, his small voice filling the room with courage. I realized something profound. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is standing up when you're terrified, when you're small, when the world says your voice doesn't matter, and speaking anyway. Life after the courtroom didn't transform overnight. Healing is never instant. It comes in slow waves like sunlight breaking through after a storm. But for the first time in years, there was peace in our home. Jasper carried himself differently. He laughed more, played more, his shoulders no longer weighed down by secrets he had been too young to hold. One evening, I asked him why he joined the school debate team, and he looked at me with that steady gaze of his. Because I know what it feels like when people lie, Mom. I want to get better at telling the truth, even when it's hard. My throat tightened with pride. That was my boy. Imogen flourished too. Her nightmares stopped, her clinginess melted into confidence. She began filling the house again with her songs, her drawings taped onto every wall, her giggles echoing down the hallway. It felt as though the darkness that had seeped into her little world had finally lifted. Sebastian changed, though, not in the way I once dreamed he might. He never gave me an apology, never admitted the damage he'd done, but something in him softened. His supervised visits turned into honest efforts, and eventually the court granted him unsupervised time again. For once, he respected the boundaries. He didn't try to turn the children against me. He began to show up for them, not with gifts or bribes, but with presence. And though I'll never call him a friend, at least now he's a father. That's more than I could say before. Charlotte faded from our story like a shadow at dawn. Within months, she was gone, no longer part of his life, no longer hovering around my children, no longer wielding her cruel words. I didn't rejoice in her absence. I simply exhaled. Some people never belonged in our story to begin with, and as for Cordelia and Beatrice, they stayed distant. They still look at me with the same cool dismissal whenever paths cross, but they stopped interfering. They stopped whispering lies into my children's ears. In a strange way, their silence became a gift. It was the closest thing to peace they could offer. But the greatest change was within me. That day in court taught me something I had never understood so clearly before. For months, I thought protecting my children meant hiding the truth from them, putting on a brave face, shielding them from the pain of betrayal. But Jasper showed me the opposite. He showed me that children see more than we realize, that they deserve honesty, that they are capable of courage beyond their years when they feel loved and trusted. He saved me. My son saved me. I often replay that moment in my head, his small body on the witness stand, his voice trembling, yet steady, his words slicing through the lies that threatened to destroy us. And I wonder what would have happened if I had silenced him, if I had told him to stay quiet, to let the adults handle it. I might have lost them. I might have lost myself. Instead, I gained something greater, proof that truth spoken with love can stand taller than wealth, louder than lies, stronger than manipulation. 2 years have passed since that day. We live in a smaller house now than the one Sebastian and I once shared, but it's filled with laughter, with honesty, with love. Jasper is 10, Imogen is 7, and though we don't have swimming pools or luxury holidays, we have something far richer. We have each other. We have peace. Sometimes people ask me if I regret putting Jasper in that position, if I regret letting an 8-year-old bear the weight of adult battles. My answer is always the same: no, not for a single second. That day, Jasper didn't just defend me, he reminded me what courage looks like. Courage isn't about size or age or power. Courage is about choosing what's right when everything around you pushes toward what's easy. And if there's one lesson I carry now, it's this: never underestimate the wisdom of a child who loves you. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room carries the biggest truth. If you've listened to my story and it touched your heart, I want to thank you for walking through this journey with me. Please take a moment to like this video, share it so others can hear. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories about resilience and family, and leave me a comment below. Tell me about a time when someone surprised you with their courage, or when truth changed everything for you. Your support means more than you know. And remember, sometimes the greatest strength comes from the smallest people in our lives.